This is TWiT.
Well, we're all sitting here a couple of weeks ago watching the WWDC keynote, and I'm just thinking, man, Alex Lindsay must be so happy right now. And actually, I texted you, and you said, yeah, it really is going to depend on how much I can get on a second mortgage on my house. Because you knew even then, this is not going to be cheap.
Well, and I think that one of the things that we have to really think about is what does pro mean? So when we say, and this is truly a pro piece of hardware. When we think about it as a personal item, like something I'm going to buy, it doesn't really add up a lot of the time. I mean, that's a big piece of hardware. But you have to remember, like when I was part of the time that I was at ILM, I was working on a Octane. SGI back in the day made these desktop computers called Octanes, and they were about $60,000 each. Wow. And so now while most of my time was spent on a Mac, I did have a period of time, and it was a very powerful computer. Because
it was tuned, it was designed to do that thing that you were doing.
It was designed to do high-end graphics. It was really built for that, and I think that this is squarely focused on one group of people.
There's been a lot of attention to price, especially the monitor price and monitor stand price. I agree with you. It's prices. You've always said this.
For a reference monitor, that is cheap.
Yeah.
So for the quality of if it does what they showed on stage, it is like half the cost of what we've spent on those kinds of monitors.
But even if it weren't, pros are spending. It's worth it to them. They're spending either money from the client, in which case they don't care, or it's their business. So this is what they need to spend to do their job, and it's If you're paying somebody $3.50 an hour, saving them half an hour saves big bucks.
You walk into some of these post houses, and you're paying thousands of dollars an hour for that place, and when you go in and pay $1,500 an hour, $2,000 an hour, you're going to expect a Mac Pro to be, with a little light coming down on it, because they're not going to, literally this is I believe in Hollywood, this is going to be one of those status symbols that you're going to put on there.
I think you're right.
That is because there's not really
I think that's why they give it such a distinctive design too. Yeah. If you see one of the new Mac Pros in the wild, you'll know you're seeing a Mac Pro. It looks like nothing else.
Right. And I think that, I think that there was a lot of up and down about the stand. The thing about stands is that I don't even know where 90% of my stands are. We don't use them. We don't use them. So
I did bring that up. That you take the stands off and get a Visa mount.
You literally, the one thing I look at when I'm buying a monitor is, does it have a Visa mount? And if it has a Visa mount, then we're set. And usually those stands go somewhere. What was nice was that they created the stand that they thought would be perfect,
but they didn't bundle it.
But didn't bundle it because it's expensive, and it created this whole market. There's this massive market. If I wanted to get into something, I would, the 300 and below for a stand for that monitor is going to be a lucrative market.
There'll be many
or 500 and below.
There'll be many of them,
and they're going to be really cool designs, and they're going to be all kinds of other things that you can do with it because they've opened that market up because they didn't have one.
So the real question, honestly, for me, was not the price, but what you thought of Apple's choices. Is the hardware? In other words, did Apple listen to what you wanted?
Oh, absolutely.
They made a rack mountable version.
I know
you wanted that.
They made it rack mountable. They made it modular. They made it very scalable.
How about the Vega Pro cards? Are those?
Well, I mean, so I understand why Apple is not putting NVIDIA cards in. I'm still bummed. Not having to me. At a professional graphics level, I still believe that NVIDIA is superior, and it's the way it manages the graphics chunks is just from a game perspective may or may not be as efficient as what's done, but with the Radeon cards, but the Vega cards. But for high-end graphics, I believe that the NVIDIA performs better. The problem is that NVIDIA wants to write the drivers, Apple wants to write the drivers, and they both have valid cases for that. And so I understand why they're doing that, but I think that's what's stopping us. And that's what's been stopping us, forever is that control. So the fly in the ointment for the whole thing is that I can't put NVIDIA cards in. I definitely would vastly prefer NVIDIA cards, but I think that overall the design within that limitation, which is kind of to me an understood limitation, it hit all the marks of what I was looking for. And I think that Apple now, if you look at, you could argue from the Mac Mini or even down to the mini iPad as a little computing device, all the way up to we don't know how expensive, but probably as much as a pretty good car, range. Apple now probably has the widest range of solutions of any manufacturer.
Really?
If you think about it, I mean, you got
that was one complaint is that, well, you've got this super high end.
But you also have a Mac Mini, and you have the iPads.
Actually, for a lot of people, Mac Mini would be a great choice.
Mac Mini would be fine. And the new Mac Minis are great. They're not very expensive.
You've got the iMac Pro, which is kind of a higher end.
Exactly. The iMac Pro takes you up to $15,000 loaded, and it's different now because the old iMacs you could only accelerate them so much, but with with Lightning, you can put a lot of power externally.
Thunderbolt 3.
With Thunderbolt, not Lightning. Thunderbolt 3.
Thunderbolt and Lightning, very, very
exactly.
frightening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But with Thunderbolt 3, you can externalize a lot of power as well. So it's not your iMac Pro can be very powerful. This is basically, there's an overlap there of kind of a low-end Mac Pro and a going up to whatever that allows you to do. But the bottom line is with that kind of RAM, I mean, for instance, on my iMac, I don't have an iMac Pro. On my iMac at home, there is a shot I shot in India, the square that I use for photogrammetry tests. And I took 192 photos with a Canon. So it's, 24 megapixel, 192 photos. And I throw it into PhotoScan. And PhotoScan will churn on that for 4 days.
Wow.
So when you're talking, and I'm clear that, I'm dying to get hold of a Mac, to go to fun. So I'm not going to buy a Mac Pro anytime soon. I don't have the money right now. But I'd love to see what a high-end Mac Pro would churn through that. And that, again, comes down to money, of being able to process it. And I think that the biggest fear I had as a professional is that Apple was never going to give us a computer that
That's what I was worried too.
That we were going to have to move the PC.
They basically were cutting that end off.
Yeah, that high end. Well, because I buy, I've bought Elementals for $65,000 each.
Yeah, we got one in the server cage,
right? And
too.
And that was on
They're
sale.
expensive, right?
And
we wait for the sales on Elementals.
But again, that was the issue there is that the that computer is worth every penny to what I was doing, and it was so it got me more work. It did work that nothing else can do. I got hired on jobs because I was the only one that had the correct equipment that was available. So
it's worth it.
It's worth it. And there's not really any, people talk about replacements for those. There isn't a replacement, and so in the same sense, those are Elemental servers. Yeah. And so the big thing is that for a Mac user, you wanted to know that you could go all the way up. You could go all the way up to the top of the, like no matter how big it gets, no matter how difficult it gets, I want to know that I can get all the way to that level. And, so now we know that if we want to edit 8K, which seems big, but it's going to be a big deal next year. Like there's a whole lot of people that have to edit 8K in Japan next year because they're already broadcasting in 8K. They're already going to do the Olympics in 8K. And there's really not a lot of machines out there that are built for that solution. So, and again, I think that when we talk about professional, we're really talking about high-end computer graphics and video professionals. That's what this is built for. I don't think it's built for anything else. I think it's built for that market. If you're doing high-end 3D, if you're doing high-end like 4K and above video, I think that this is the computer that you want to have. And I think that Apple will probably in the first year sell as many as they make. As many as they can make.
They may not be able to make
no,
many.
I don't. But I also think the modular nature of this product probably makes it easier to make in mass. I think one of the reasons it's hard to pump out iPhones and iPads and the MacBook Pros sometimes is that the tolerances are so incredibly tight for these tiny little devices that the return policy is very. The returns internally, I think, are harder, and so I think that I think this is going to be good. My only hope is that they pull off that if they've set the stage of this as a Mac Pro, the thing that I hope in sometime in the next year or two is we see a laptop that takes the same approach. Like we're gonna, because right now what we have is like a, what we call a MacBook Pro right now is a MacBook Air Plus, in my opinion, as a graphics professional. Like if I want something that really is going to be fast, I'm not buying them. Like I definitely have fast processing laptops, and they're Razer or they're somebody else. They're not Alienware. They're not Macs. For that super high powered process. And so I'm hoping that Apple will take this as the, what if we had a beefy, heavy, lots of battery, lots of power, lots of graphics laptop that professionals could go
wouldn't
with.
hold my breath.
No, I can dream. I dreamed about this thing for years.
Got this.
I've dreamed about this for years, and it happened. So it was like, so and it, and I think that it is, it's just, it's the best. I mean, I definitely think it's the best desktop made. I don't. There's
I would agree with you. I don't think there's anything that competes with this.
And I think that that's where Apple should be focusing its efforts on the best of whatever area it's going to go into. Not a. There's no reason for them to go into pretty good.
I also think this was Apple a little bit flexing its design and engineering muscles and saying, look, if we didn't put any constraints on our engineering team and our designs team.
Yeah.
If we just said cost is no object,
we want to be modular.
What would you do? And and here's the requirements. We've got all these. I mean, they hired professional videographers, artists, photographers to work at Apple to advise them on this. So I'm sure this team was saying, well, I mean, it would be nice if you did this. It'd be nice if you did that. And they said, okay, we'll give you everything you ask for. And that's sure what this looks like, except for maybe NVIDIA. This is a very impressive piece of hardware. I think a lot of the people who are butthurt because there isn't a less expensive version of this.
There is a less expensive version. It's called an iMac Pro.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of enthusiasts like me. I would love to have this, but it's out of my reach completely.
I would love to have a Ferrari too. But,
same thing. Same thing.
Instead, I have a used.
And Ferrari doesn't make an inexpensive Ferrari.
No, they don't make an inexpensive. Well, and Apple does. That's the funny thing is Apple Apple makes an inexpensive computer. They make really inexpensive computers, and they happen to make a really high end one. So this is more of a kind of almost a Chevrolet. I don't think the Chevrolet is a good example, but it's having a there's a wide range of Macs that you can get, and they all run the same operating system, and no matter how big you get, there's one that will take all the money out of your wallet.
and the display, did that check all the boxes for you?
Oh yeah. I mean that display. I mean it is. The display is amazing, and definitely for the price. I know that sounds like an expensive display, but for what it's competing with, it is inexpensive. To get a display, HDR display that has, I thought the XDR was a little much, but
is that
1600 nits is very bright. I mean, it's like what is considered kind of HDR, like an quote unquote HDR screen nowadays is really 1000 nits. So 1000 nits full sustained is very high. There's not that many that are doing 1000 nits full sustained.
That's so that if you were J.J. Abrams and you had some specular highlights on a starship, it would blind you. It would hurt.
It's also that it has to do with the brightness of every color. So everything is going to look richer.
It's not just the bright white.
No, because the more nits it has, the greater contrast between black and white.
Right.
So now you're going to have the brights are really bright, and the format, the PQ 2020. Format goes to 10,000, gamut. I mean, 10,000 nits. But almost, I don't think anyone makes a monitor that's 10,000. I think that the highest I've heard of is 4,000 nits, but 1,000 is kind of considered that base.
It's not overall brightness that you're thinking about, though, or is it?
No, it's definitely not. Okay. Mike was saying it's not Rec 2020. It's not Rec 2020. It's P3. But it's But anyway, the
should it be Rec 2020? That's the high end standard.
This is good. I mean, it's enough.
P3 is enough. P3 is what
it's
Rec 2020 is what movies are mixed to, right?
Well, no. Rec 2020 is the next HDR. It's the HDR format.
Okay.
And so that's a much still a larger gamut.
Right.
P3 is a slightly smaller gamut inside of that gamut.
And a Rec 2020 monitor would be
That's like, yeah. Well, I mean,
20,000.
again, a lot of these get really expensive, and so I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but it's a it's a very 6K. That level of resolution, an accurate monitor, we think. I mean, that's what they're.
Well, it's Apple.
If it is what they're proposing,
accurate, yeah.
If it is what they're proposing, you're talking about something that for a creative professional is the best buy out.
More for a videographer than a photographer, or a photographer would want this too?
Well, a photographer that's making a lot of money would definitely want that.
Yeah.
I think that it's probably a little overkill for a photographer.
If you're Annie Leibovitz, you want this monitor.
Yeah. I mean, I think that,
and you can afford it.
I think that if you can afford it, everybody who can afford it is going to want this monitor and the stand. But the
is the stand really worth $1,000? I mean,
I don't know.
You made
I
the
haven't
excellent
touched
point, which is there will be third party.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of people.
I presume that Apple hasn't done something that makes it impossible to make a third-party stand.
Well, they built a Visa mount adapter.
So you would buy the Visa adapter and then.
Well, I think some people are going to probably.
Stand.
I bet you people will build ones that go right into that. Don't need the Visa mount.
Right.
But the Visa mount will be the easy way for you to make it available to everything, right? And so, I think that's going to be fine. Anyway, but I think that. A lot of people are going to want that monitor. I think that for photographers, it's going to be better than what the iMac does as far as the monitor goes. I don't know if the ROI is there just by itself. If you're shooting with medium format, some of the brand new, really large, like giant medium format, and you're shooting in HDR, and those files could get big enough where having that kind of RAM that the Mac Pro has, with that monitor could definitely make a difference. But I definitely think that where you're going to see this really take off is in the the really high end professionals that want to use a Mac, but also want to do so the people who are using Maya and Cinema 4D and doing photogrammetry, doing LiDAR work, doing 8K video, 4K video, those types of things, compositing. I think that those are all places where this Mac is going to make is going to pay for itself.
And do most of these people pay the extra $1,000 for the non-glare, the nano-textured glass?
I would.
Okay.
The biggest frustration that you have when you get these monitors is you get these highlights and stuff like that.
Right.
And the problem has been is that it's been
matte really
you put matte and then
kills the color.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I would look at it before I ordered it. I would want to see the monitor next to the other one and make sure that it doesn't drive me crazy like Matt does. But Matt is usually what we've done in the past because it was not as good, but it wasn't as the mirror reflection was definitely problematic.
Glare is an issue, yeah.